Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We are here at RS Future Rancho Cucamonga, our second location. I don't think I've ever talked about this location because the vlog had been kind of MIA for so long, but basically towards the end of the year, I took over the shop half of Art of Attack in Rancho Cucamonga. Angel and Pat over there are awesome guys, and I needed to expand with RS Future. I just ran out of space in our brand new shop. I mean, we moved in there in January, and by basically halfway through the year, we'd already run out of space. So they had a lot of space here, so I took this over, and kind of from here to there is all RS Future Rancho. So we're here to talk about the new GR86, which I was contracted by Art of Attack to build this car and kind of get it through the various phases of the build that this thing's going to go through. So at first it's going to be kind of like a mild bolt-ons, just see what the GR86 can do. I was actually pretty excited about this platform, which I wasn't very excited about the original FRS, no offense if you have one, but the power level, kind of the upgrades that they made to the car, some of the, I guess, overall just dynamics of the car seemed a lot more exciting than the last generation, and it's pretty cool to be working on one of the first ones out. So we're gonna take it out, baseline it, see what we can do, try to get some information on the car, map out the kinematics and the suspension geometry, see what's good, what's not good, and you know, just kind of go from the phases of what your typical person that would buy one of these would do to them, and see what it will do on a racetrack. I know these are already going pretty quick, so yeah, we'll give it a quick once over on the outside of the car, get it up in the air and take a look, kind of give you my first impressions of it. Kind of, I don't know if I mentioned, but just in case I did or didn't, I'm really not the biggest FRS BRZ platform guy, at least not the first generation one. I know almost nothing about them. I've driven a couple of them. Oddly enough, with everything that I've driven, I've had very little seat time in FRS BRZs. I've probably driven a few of them, and they were fun cars, kind of like a Miata, where left a little unimpressed, but overall a good car to learn with. This car seems to be a step above that, so that's what got me a little bit more excited. So yeah, let's take a look. All right, so we have the car up in the air, and I'm gonna give you kind of just, I'm gonna look at some things and basically just talk about it. I haven't seen the underside of this, but the first thing that I notice is that the car is pretty flat underneath. You know, modern cars do a very good job of this to reduce drag and increase fuel economy, but you know, under tray here, straight into the stiffener plate, right into some of these little flat panels there, which is pretty cool. Exhaust looks to be a pretty good size, so you're probably not gonna get a ton of power out of the exhaust. And the car actually sounds pretty good inside. Sounded nice and sporty. But I would bet just by making some small changes, like just changing the muffler, probably pick up some noise and make the thing sound pretty good. Let's see, transmission. Transmission's fairly small as expected. Pretty small, lightweight car. It looks like there's a lot of room to work with though. You can kind of see up here how small the transmission is, and then over there, like kind of how much space there is side to side. So probably fit a big gearbox in there. 2 piston calipers, which is pretty cool. So I bet this thing stops pretty well. Saw an ABS system under the hood when we were looking earlier. So probably a modern ABS mixed with a pretty good size pad and caliper, and then a standard strut design. Looks like just a typical strut. Sway bar, fairly small, and then this little kind of like cheap looking stamped lower wishbone or lower control arm. But pretty standard, you know, nothing wrong with the McPherson design. Porsche raced with them successfully, same with BMW for decades, won many championships, so I'm not an anti McPherson kind of guy. You can make almost anything work if you put the work into it. In the rear, you have a multi-link setup here where you have kind of like a, let's see if we can get this, it's a little bit dark over here. See this a little bit brighter. All right, cool, there we go. So a couple of lower arms here that are going to control the toe and camber curve. So probably get some custom arms, probably SPL, or someone will make something there that you can use to modify and play with your geometry. And then you have an upper control arm and a little single piston caliper. Kind of coilover spring design, pretty standard. From what I hear, the last generation FRS BRZ coilovers will fit on this car. But overall, looks fairly easy to work on as well. I would imagine you pull this little plate off and you have access to most things. If you know these cars better than I do, at least the last generation, maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, underneath looks not bad in that front end big grille. So if you're gonna put anything big power in there, you'd be good. Quite honestly, aerodynamically, I'd probably block off the vast majority of that. I doubt this thing needs that much cooling. Let's see, are these? I wonder if these are functional. Oh, it looks like they're open there. So an air curtain. So what this is designed to do is basically to reduce drag. It almost acts as like a spat, where you see kind of like a flat vertical piece on like time attack cars or race cars. This comes through here. It exits. I don't know if you can see. It's a little bit dark. Let me see if I can get some light in there. But it basically exits right here. You can kind of see some light shining through there. So exits through here, creates what's called an air curtain, where basically as the faster you go, it pushes air outwards and it pushes air around the tire and reduces drag. And then you have some kind of interesting aero features here. Like here, there's like a very sharp edge, which you can see. And typically that's to reduce drag. Same with these very sharp taillights. So when you see like a sharp angle, the taillight just kind of cuts off there. It's to prevent airflow from wrapping around and creating drag. So pretty neat there. I will say this thing fits awful tire size. You basically have what looks like 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch on the inside, and then on the outside you didn't have very much. So I think fitting tires on this car is going to be a challenge for anything serious. Stock is 215 in the front. Let's see what it is in the rear. It is a 215 in the rear. Also, it's square. All right, so first impressions. Not so bad down there. Standard McPherson design in the front, multi-link in the rear. Pretty cool there. Overall, looks like if you were to tear one of these down to something, like basically strip everything out of it, engine, trans, differential, and go for something really crazy, it looks like you have a lot of space to work with, which is pretty cool. Brakes look adequate for probably anything up to about 300 wheel horsepower. Obviously, we'll test that with some pads and getting it on track and some good tires. Biggest issue I see is tires seem like they're going to be pretty hard to fit, and that makes sense because I've already heard of people saying that what would be like an aggressive size fitment on the last cars don't work on these, but that's going to be easy to fix. I mean, granted, most people aren't into cutting up, new cars, but we cut up the M4, the NSX has been destroyed, and we'll destroy plenty of other cars, so this is not a big deal. So we'll probably cut this thing up in the future and fit some serious tire in it and get some power in it and do all that fun stuff. But for now, the goal is just to do some standard bolt-ons, see what it'll do, and have some fun. All right, so we've got this thing on the scales, as you can see, and we've got the results here. Let me see if I can flip this around and get this sorted here where you can read it. Okay, so a couple things. 2786 is the total weight, so it's actually a lot heavier than what I would have liked to have seen. Light for a modern car, but still fairly heavy. So probably a few 100 pounds you can take out of there. Probably pretty easy to get this in the 2500 range. It's got like a 3/4 tank of gas, so it's not like it's empty, but also not full. The cross weight is pretty good. I'd have to see what it is when I get in it or when a driver gets in it, but still, like, being in 50 stock is pretty solid. 50.3 left is going to get worse when the driver gets in, so not the best, but granted, this is just stock. And then a rearward bias of 43.69 is absolutely awful. The reason being that your rear bias being that bad on a front engine car, you're not, on anything rear wheel drive, weight over the rear tires is a good thing, and that will help just with the general dynamics of the car. So having the weight that far forward isn't that great, and to be honest, since this is such a simple car, there's not a whole lot you can take out of the front end to make it lighter. You can probably do things like reduce the weight of the exhaust, the exhaust manifolds, take out the catalytic converters on like a full race car, things like that are going to be doable to cut the weight out of the front. But to give you an example, most race cars are heavily rear biased in comparison. A great example of like a front engine rear wheel drive car that has a good weight distribution would be the Viper, which has like a 53% rearward bias, which is awesome and probably part of the reason why those things are so fast. Ford GT, their LM car, the Le Mans car, is a 53% rear bias, and that's in a mid-engine car, so they did the opposite of moving everything rearward as far forward as possible. But ideal range is considered to be in most trains of thought in the 53 to 55% rearward. So being at 43% rearward is not that great. And with low power, not that big of a deal. But if you start building these things for like really high horsepower, or let's say you swap it and you put a turbocharger in the front end, so that way it gets even worse weight distribution wise, that's not great, you know? But there are a lot of things you can do, and then as you start doing other things like racing modifications, like let's say you strip everything out of the front and put a giant diff in the rear, that's gonna add some weight back there, potentially put heavier axles and that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my kind of like interpretation of this car and some of the baseline. We're obviously gonna be working with it a lot, doing a lot of what we can do to bring that weight down to what I would consider to be more ideal, and working on the weight distribution as well, because that is important. And we're gonna add weight to the car by putting on like bigger wheels and tires and things like that, and certain modifications. But overall, really not a bad platform to start with, especially considering the money and the options out there today. Pretty cool car. My first impressions of driving it were very positive. So that's kind of my take on the car. And again, sorry, this is a little bit of a long-winded, nerdy look at the car, but hopefully we'll have a lot more action and on-track stuff in the future very shortly. So thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.